What's up, everybody? This is Fred Richani of TSC News. I have right here via Skype one of the most popular guests in TSC history. Former WWE Creative team member, current VH1 producer, Twitter extraordinaire, Andrew Goldstein. Andrew, what's going on, my man?
Hey, Fred. Thanks for having me, man.
Hey, my pleasure. Now, at the time we're recording this, SummerSlam's right around the corner. We're going to talk about SummerSlam in a little bit. We got the WWE Network. TNA seems to be in disarray. Wrestlers wondering over there in the indies, okay, where the hell am I going to go besides WWE? So I guess we should probably start with the state of TNA Impact Wrestling. We just heard tonight that they are moving to Wednesday nights on Spike TV, presumably to not only avoid the NFL competition, but the rumored move of Smackdown to from Friday nights to Thursday nights on Sci-Fi. Do you think this means well for TNA, or is it just a false flag for the unfortunate inevitable?
Well, I'll just put out there first, I spent 3 years at Spike before I was at VH1, and just because I was the wrestling guy, I ended up consulting on a lot of TNA stuff, and I still am in contact with a lot of people at Spike, and I've known for a while that things were going to change. I think the rumors were premature about them being full sale canceled, but I think the move to Wednesday is a good sign. Also, it seems like every week Big John Gaburik is tweeting that they've re-signed Zema Ion to a multi-year contract. They've re-signed, a bunch of other guys to multi-year contracts. And I don't think a company would be doing that if they were losing their national TV. So I think there's been a lot of things ignored out there that people just like to jump on the story that seems most controversial, which is TNA is closing down. But I don't think that's the case. And look, I went to one show each of their New York runs, and I mean the places were packed. Spike executives were in the building. Everybody was in good spirits. There was no dire attitude. There was no this is the end of days for Spike TV. It wasn't the dog days of the company. It was business as usual. So I think in one way or another, you're going to have TNA wrestling on TV. Whether it's on Spike for the long term, we don't know that yet. But I think they'll eventually land somewhere. But I like Wednesday nights. It's cool. There's nothing on Wednesdays.
Very cool. Taking the UFC's old night from back in the Spike days. But let's just say they don't end up on Spike, but they end up elsewhere. Doesn't look like it's going to be FS1. I'll throw out a network. Access TV. Okay? Chances are they're probably not going to get the same amount of money that they're getting from Spike right now. Long term, can they still sustain that success that they're having with the New York tapings and not only remain on air, but dare I say be profitable?
Yeah, I mean, look, New York is a hard thing. It's very expensive. For years, people have been saying, well, why don't you just scrap the Impact Zone and do all your TV at the Manhattan Center? Well, that's a great idea, but it's like triple the expense to do it in New York. But I think bulk shooting the way they do, not being live every week or pseudo live, I think bulk shooting the way they have been lately will save them a lot of money, and lower talent costs, lower executive costs. I think there's ways to do it. I also think their international deals are pretty extensive from what it seems like. They're pretty huge overseas, especially in the UK. So, like I said, I think TNA will be fine. I don't think Dixie Carter and the Carter family would have stayed in it this long if they thought they were just going to go under when their TV contract went up. So, and they're being rep by a pretty strong talent agency here in New York, UTA, and that company's not in the business of teaming up with failures. So, I think wherever they land, they'll continue. But I will say, I think a cooler place to put TNA wrestling would have been a little throwback to history, done Saturdays at 6:05 p.m. Would have been a pretty fun nod to history
Oh yeah, the old TBS days with Saturday night.
I pitched when I was at Spike. I pitched that they moved to Saturday mornings, but they wanted that R-rated, that PG, that R-rated content.
True that. True that. Now, here's an idea that I actually had, not just for TNA, but something that WWE could apply. I want to get your thoughts on this because, of course, we're hearing WWE's making a ton of budget cuts. So they're going to make even more budget cuts next year, which unfortunately is going to result in a lot of guys losing jobs. But, that's the network, which we'll talk about in a second. What do you think about WWE and more so TNA going to college towns and running in smaller, cheaper venues, but with lively young crowds? And if they have to pay per, hey, get a bunch of college kids, get a lively crowd, party atmosphere. I feel like it'd be something different from what we normally see.
Well, TNA kind of does that now because as a Temple grad, I know that where TNA runs in Philly, they run at the Liacouras Center on Temple's campus. Not that that's a bustling college campus, but, I think, WWE does the Bryce Jordan Center and they go to, when they're in Vegas, they do the arena at UNLV. So I think they've already kind of been doing that. But, if WWE starts running A and B towns again, definitely college campuses. But, again, that's not really their target demo. They want kids. They want parents and kids. They want people who are going to spend money. College kids aren't going to spend money.
Now, we had a little bit of a Twitter debate a few weeks back, which is very enlightening. Whoa! Lights went off there.
My bulb, I think, just burnt out, but that's cool.
That's all right. Are you sure it's not the Wyatt family?
Oh, there we go. We're back.
Okay, cool. All right.
Yeah, lights out. Taker is going to be right behind me.
Yeah, he apparently retweeted you. Is that the real Undertaker Twitter account?
Yeah, at WWE Mark W. Calloway. Big news this week that he joined as himself on Twitter. Not sure if it's really him, but I tweeted a friend of mine who tweeted us a question, sort of tongue in cheek, and I said, "Well, why don't you ask the Undertaker himself because he's on Twitter?" And the at WWE Mark W. Calloway retweeted it, retweeted it. Just a second before we started recording. So I don't know if it's legit, but it's got the WWE handle before it. But, the followers are pretty low. It doesn't have a blue check mark. So I don't know if it's legit.
We shall see. Hopefully it's not a Cranky Vince. Hopefully it is the real deal. Although I like to think that Cranky Vince is actually an extension of Vince McMahon's personality.
Cranky Taker would be pretty fun.
Definitely would. Now, you and I, as I just mentioned before, did have a bit of a Twitter debate, and we're kind of talking about it in 140 characters about a lot of things that are wrong with WWE and them getting network subscribers. And I really feel like a lot of the problems right now that they could rectify, at least on the creative end, don't cost a thing. Wins and losses mattering. Not having 500 booking, even Steven booking, as they call it. Making titles mean something. Not doing distraction finishes and just going to the well far too many times. Why hasn't anybody backstage, an agent, Paul Levesque, whoever, just kind of, woke up and said, hey, man, maybe we should go back to doing things like we used to when we were more successful?
Well, I think we're getting some of that, at least in the last year, now that Triple H has really taken firm hold of booking. I'm told, my friends who are still there, that Hunter is super involved. He loves tag teams. He loves managers. He loves hot 80s type angles and that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it all still has to be filtered through Vince. And there's also a lot of corporate reasons why they do a lot of the things they do. And I think a lot of times they are, even though they'll deny it, I think they really try to outsmart the smart marks. And sometimes when you do that, you overthink and you overbook, and your TV becomes overwrought. So, but I have faith. I think Triple H is a legitimate fan of wrestling. He's a smart guy, and I think we've seen in the last year that certain cool, they've been giving you little nuggets of hope that they're going to turn around. But then again, you'll see something like Cesaro, go 3 acts of Raw with Cena, huge, incredible match, and then the next week he jobs to Ziggler, and the next week he jobs to to Swagger, and then he jobs to Swagger again. So, those things still exist, those head scratchers. But I think they're moving in the right direction. And by no means am I a shill. I've been very critical on Twitter and on podcasts and on your show. I just think that I have more faith in Triple H and even Stephanie than I do in Vince putting together a really exciting week-to-week product. But there are definitely still things they could do better, and I've got a bunch of ideas. I know you have a bunch of ideas, and we can hash those out.
Yeah, and is it true that Triple H really is having that much trouble getting through to Vince? And the reason I ask that is because back when Triple H was a full-time performer, and for better or worse, and I was a Triple H fan growing up, it seemed like he always kind of got his way. And he always got painted in a favorable light, and whether that was best for business or not, he felt it was. And, well, we saw Triple H on top in the last, 15 years or so. Here he is now, head of talent relations. He called up guys like Bo Dallas. He called up guys like Adam Rose. Adam Rose, I think he's more of a mid-card player, but a guy like Bo Dallas, starting to get over, was 9-0. Spoiler alert, everybody, if you watched this before SmackDown, he loses in a minute to Jack Swagger. And like you said with the Cesaro thing, that's one of those head scratchers. And as a guy that's the head of talent relations, that's the second in line to be in charge of WWE. I mean, do you think the guy's got to assert himself a little more to protect the guys that he signed to NXT? Or is there really that much of a barrier through Vince McMahon and also Kevin Dunn?
Well, I think you're going to see in the next few years the old guard leaving. The day they get rid of Kevin Dunn, I think Triple H will be the happiest guy on the planet. And I do still think that at the end of the day, he's still the one calling the shots in the truck, and Vince is still the one calling the shots in Gorilla and in the production meetings. So, but that can't go on forever. And I think slowly but surely. But back to what you said about Bo Dallas. First of all, didn't he? I thought he lost to R-Truth.
Well, he lost to R-Truth, and that was whatever. But at least those matches were kind of, sort of competitive, even if it brought him at the level of R-Truth.
I didn't mind him losing to R-Truth because streaks to me is like it ends up becoming more of a burden than a good thing. Because then you keep going, and then it's like, all right, well, who does he lose to,
right.
and how do we get out of this storyline?
Well, he wasn't losing to R-Truth in 2 minutes. Like my opponent, now he's just getting squashed. At least as recently as the SmackDown. I mean,
look, my biggest problem, and if you read my column, I posted about a month ago on PW Mania. My big problem with NXT is that there's just this universal agreement that because something gets over in front of 800 or less fans in Florida and maybe a couple thousand on the internet that actually watch NXT on Tuesday nights, that if you put it on TV, it'll immediately get over. And I don't think that's true. I think you still need to indoctrinate, the millions of people in the WWE universe. So you take somebody like Adam Rose. Yeah, that thing was fire in NXT. People loved his entrance. People loved the people following him to the ring. They loved his whole shtick. You put him on WWE TV, couple vignettes, doesn't really, people are still like, what am I supposed to think of this guy? And, the same thing, but, Bo got over quickly, but I think the thing with Bo Dallas is there's no spot for him right now. What story are you going to put him in that's front of, that's top of the card for SummerSlam? There's nothing. I think, SummerSlam is basically Mania light, and just like the month or two leading up to Mania, you see mid-card guys go away, and the emphasis of every Monday on Raw becomes those top four matches, the people involved in those top four storylines. So I think, it has to do with us being in SummerSlam season, and I think once SummerSlam passes, we're going to get back to Bo Dallas being a focal point of the show. And then on the other side of the coin, I just don't think it's a good idea to assume that just because something gets over at NXT, it'll automatically get over on WWE TV. I mean, look at the Wyatts. It took a ton of vignettes and a ton of live in-ring promos and the whole presentation being put out there and them sort of taking out Kane and just little. It took about 6 months for the Wyatts to mean something before it worked. So I just think that they're a little too quick to take these NXT storylines. Look at Emma. Emma was a perfect example too. I could keep going, but Emma was the hottest thing in NXT. They brought her up to the main roster. They just had her show up on TV doing that stupid dance, put her with Santino. She had no shot. So I think that's a little lazy on their part, but I also think right now it has to do with us being, a week out from SummerSlam.
Do you think they're too overconfident, though, in their booking ability? Because presumably when you bring a guy up or a gal up from NXT, you want them to have some type of storyline, some type of angle that gives them momentum. I mean, I thought that was their MO. Obviously, they haven't followed through with that with Adam Rose and Bo Dallas and Emma. I mean, don't you think it's a little, I don't know, tougher on them unnecessarily? You have a guy lose in 2 minutes, then you decide to build him back up, or you give Cesaro a losing streak, then you decide to build him back up. Like, why not just give these guys some protection? I'm not saying have Cesaro stay undefeated the whole year, okay, or Ziggler stay undefeated the whole year, but have them win more often than not so they stand out from a guy like, say, Heath Slater.
Yeah. No, look, man, we're on the same page. I agree. I think, it's the whole 3 hours every week, There's only so many match configurations you can make before everybody sort of gets stale. And it leads me to sort of throw out my big campaign platform, all hypothetical. Let's say in the event that I was ever hired to run talent relations, my first order of business, and I spell this out very clearly in my column, but basically the biggest thing I think WWE should do that would vastly improve their booking and their TVs and their pay-per-views and everything going forward is to create a traveling team of talent. There's so many in-between talents that have been on TV for so long that just don't mean anything anymore. And from week to week, they win, they lose, they're in a main event program, then they're down to the mid-card, then they're brought back up, and Randy Orton's been on TV for 12 years, but it doesn't mean anything. And it doesn't matter who's giving him the rub or whether he's holding the title or not or whatever. It just doesn't mean anything anymore. So my idea would be a traveling team. You take a guy like R-Truth, Alberto Del Rio before he was fired, Randy Orton,
Kofi Kingston.
Kofi Kingston, perfect example. Basically, it's the guys that are too experienced to be in NXT, but are too stale on Raw, And you send them to Japan. You send them to AAA in Mexico. You send them to the UK. You send them to India. It's actually something that TNA does better than WWE, which is called, they basically produce their own show in India, but besides the point, I would strike deals with those international promotions, and I would send these guys under the WWE banner. They still get their paycheck, and they go over there. They work on their character. They work on, they get to improve their work rate, learn a different style. A lot of these guys only know the WWE developmental style. I mean, Kofi Kingston, he's never wrestled anywhere else but under the WWE umbrella. Ryback, that dude's been in developmental since I was there in 2006. He was Ryan Reeves. So take guys like that have just been up and down and send them somewhere where they can work consistently for new eyeballs and work on their character, do something out of the box, do something completely out of character for them, not have to worry about, what Vince McMahon thinks of it. And then it makes them fresh in 6, 7, 8 months when something like Daniel Bryan breaking his neck or an elimination chamber with the title up for grabs. You have a fresh body to put in there. Like, holy crap, here comes Alberto Del Rio from Mexico because the title is up for grabs. Here he is. Of course he would come up from Mexico because this is an amazing opportunity. And then you'd be excited as a fan because Alberto Del Rio is back and he's put into this elimination chamber, as opposed to just announcing that he's the first entrant. And it's a fart in church when they make the announcement. Everybody's like, "Ugh, who cares?" It's like such a throwaway. So the whole thing, basically, people like Stan Hansen, Abdullah the Butcher, Bruiser Brody, the Road Warriors, and the Undertaker and Brock Lesnar, they're like outlaws. They would come in, they do their business, they light up the promotion, and then they leave. And that's what I think WWE needs to manufacture in the absence of the territories. It's basically created for yourself.
And I do think also they kind of need to, especially at this stage, no longer be gun-shy about putting guys over. I mean, I'm happy with what they're doing with Ambrose, with Rollins, with Roman Reigns. I think they're doing a tremendous job with all three of those guys from the Shield. But then I look at a guy like Bray Wyatt, who's kind of in a holding pattern right now with Chris Jericho. And I just look back to a couple months ago when he had all that momentum going into WrestleMania. It made perfect sense for him to beat John Cena. He had the 3-on-1 advantage. And instead he lost to Cena. He had that horrific cage match with him afterwards, with that kid with the vocoder. Yeah. And then, he had a great last man standing match. But ultimately, a feud that was supposed to get him to the main event level didn't really do that. Do you think they got to be less gun-shy about beating guys like John Cena and Randy Orton at this stage?
I think that they have put their eggs in a lot of baskets that haven't worked out. They tried putting the title on Swagger. That didn't work. They tried putting it on Dolph. That didn't work. Not really because he even got a fair shot, but, he got injured. They went with the whole Daniel Bryan thing, and unfortunately that didn't work out. They went with Punk. That didn't work out. So I think when all else fails, you go back to Cena, and for better or for worse, I don't like it, but they put the title on Randy Orton. Nobody cared. I don't know what you do.
Well, do you think it's also a self-fulfilling prophecy? I mean, Daniel Bryan, even before he got injured, lost a lot of momentum because he got booked into feud with Kane. And God bless, I love Kane, but the dude's 47. He's been on TV. You're talking about a guy who's been on TV. He's been on TV since 97.
Kane's in my Kane, Big Show, Abyss, and TNA. It's like those three dudes. Yeah. Nothing that they can do on television that will ever excite me ever again.
Exactly. Bryan got put in a feud with Kane. How do you expect him to continue that momentum when he feuds with Kane?
That was the last straw. That's what made Punk leave. The night after. The night after
Royal Rumble, yeah.
Royal Rumble, he was. Kane eliminated him, and they were supposed to move on from there. And Punk was like, "I'm out of here. This is ridiculous. I shouldn't be in a holding pattern with Kane." So. Look, I really think it's the 3 hours of TV every week that just kills them. It kills any opportunity for them to tell a story because there's just too much to do. There's just so much time to fill that, where do you go? What used to take them a month now takes them 2 weeks because they have 2 weeks is 6 hours of TV.
And if SmackDown moves to Thursday nights, you would at least think that they're going to try to make that show a little more relevant.
Yeah, SmackDown hasn't been relevant since. It just became. Main Event almost has more storyline relevant matches now than SmackDown. Like SmackDown has just been forgotten, and it used to, the SmackDown 6 and King Booker and all that kind of stuff. When The Rock was there, SmackDown had when Heyman was booking. If you watch the Heyman DVD, he talks about how he took that show right to Raw. So he went right at Raw. Between Raw being 3 hours, SmackDown being 2, you got Main Event in there. You have all the content on the network. I think it's an overreach completely. I'm not surprised that the network doesn't have the subscribers that they thought they would have. I'm not surprised at all.
Do you think it's just because of the way they kind of presented it? Do you think it's also? I think ultimately it's personally, I think it's ultimately the content, but everything else, the presentation, how it's put together technologically. It's kind of a mess.
people don't have free time, dude. People don't have time to just. I mean, some people do, but not a lot. Not a million people don't have time to sit at home and watch, Starrcade '94 because they have, just because it's available to them now. They don't have time to watch, some ECW TV from 1995. They don't have time. So why invest the money? I mean, I think the only reason a lot of people bought it is to get the pay-per-views. The whole thing doesn't make sense to me because now they still call it a pay-per-view. Nobody's paying to view anything. It ruined the whole excitement of a pay-per-view because now you just sit on your couch and you watch it on your laptop as opposed to getting together with your buddies and, somebody pays for it.
Well, I think the problem is now that people are sharing their password with their buddies and they're just watching it.
Yeah. It's not like Netflix where there's a diversity of programming. This is one genre of something. I just think it's a massive overreach, and it's great that it exists. I love that the archives are there, but it's not that much different than YouTube. It's just a little better. It's just a little more complete. Instead of having to watch things in pieces that you do on YouTube. Yeah, you pay.
Well, even on the network, man. I mean, you're talking about watching it in pieces. I can watch more episodic programming on YouTube than as far as like old stuff than I can on the network. I mean, I don't know if you've seen like the WCW archives as far as Nitro goes. They're non-existent. Thunder, non-existent. Old Raws. Like, I mean, okay, they have some from 1993. I'll go to like 1998. There's 3 Raws from 98. Like, how am I supposed to binge watch? If I want to, they're trying to reach all people here, lapsed fans, current fans. I mean, you would think you'd have something for everybody where people can binge watch if they want to binge watch in the middle of the night.
I just think it completely ruins the viewing. It just, to me, it's just so gross. I'm just not. I mean, I'm such a fan of the content. Or whatever content there is, but I'm just I just hate it. I'm too old school. Like I used to love wrestling magazines and waiting 4 months for Starrcade and that type of thing. And there's just none of that now. Like I feel bad for current young fans because they don't understand. They don't understand the mystique of somebody like Bam Bam Bigelow coming in and you finally get to see him wrestle. There's none of that because you have 3 hours on Monday to just be bored to death of Randy Orton. How many times do we see Cena versus Orton versus Kane? It's just, and like you said, they're trigger shy. They won't elevate somebody to the point where they're consistently in the main event. I mean, they're switching up who's at the end of the show every week. There's nobody really to get excited about. Ziggler loses for a full year, and then they give him a couple wins, and everybody's like, all right, here comes Ziggler. And then, he's going to job out soon. He's in a thing with Miz. Who cares? And that's why, if you took, 10 guys and got a return on your investment by sending them overseas or sending them somewhere, then when stuff gets slow, when stuff gets boring, you cherry pick a guy and you bring him back.
Why do they do so many distraction finishes?
Yeah. What's so funny? When I was there, midway through my run, I just remember an arbitrary decision by Stephanie was just that one of the writer's assistants, John Carl, had to keep a spreadsheet of, basically you'd get the script for Raw, and the writer's assistant, John, he would go through it and chart what each finish was. He would sit in the production meeting and he would chart what every finish was, if there was a foreign object, each kind of pin, fall, and he would denote if there was a crossover, if there was too much of the same thing, and then they would try to switch it up and keep it even. And I think it seems to me like they've gotten away from it because you're right. Everything's a distraction finish. Everything is like Russo booked. Somebody's running in, or nobody wins clean anymore, or there's some type of just angle alert thing.
Or what I hate, the entrance music will come on for a guy like Kane, and he'll just walk to the ring and distract the guy like that. Like, at least if you're gonna distract somebody, don't play the theme song. Like that to me just throws salt on the wound.
That's the worst. I mean, the whole run-in with this impromptu run-in, but their music plays as if like, you know, Roman Reigns is in the back watching on a monitor, and he's like, I'm going to go out and help John Cena. And on his way out, he stops by Gorilla and says, hit my music. Like, it's so unrealistic, you know?
Yeah.
It's like those little things. It's quality control. And I used to stress that to TNA all the time. I was like, what your TV needs is quality control. You need somebody dedicated to being like, look, you just did 3 matches in a row with blood. Give it a rest. You just did 3 matches in a row where a chair was used. You know, those things, everything. It's just too much. As Jim Ross tweeted a bunch tonight about how both TNA TV and WWE TV, there's just too much talking.
Yeah, every week too. And I think Steph and Triple H have done a pretty good job as far as on-air characters. But I mean, every week the Authority starts the show. Every week, you go grand promo by Stephanie, grand promo by Triple H. Change it up, you know. Like it's like this is wrestling. You know, I'm gonna come out and have a verbal debate. Like
it's like my it's like my big pet peeve with Saturday Night Live. You know, every week it's a political sketch in the cold open from the office or the desk of the president. Whereas in the 80s, they would do all kinds of sketches for the cold open before the monologue. You know, they would have Bill Clinton in a McDonald's, you know, trying hamburgers. It's a shout out to your old viewers if you remember that sketch. But you know, it's that type of thing. The worst is post pay-per-view Raws always start out with one guy in the ring cuts promo, second guy comes out, cuts promo about how he is the #1 contender, third guy comes out, he's the #1 contender, fourth guy comes out, he's the #1 contender, authority figure comes out and says, you know, some kind of match between all 4 of you to figure out who is the #1 contender. It's like it's just so cookie cutter.
And what's bad too is there's no longer Teddy Long to make the tag team matches exciting in the first place.
Look, dude, I get rid of authority figures.
Yeah.
I told TNA a million times, go back and watch old NWA worldwide broadcasts where, you know, matches were made out of impromptu confrontations on the stage that was sort of in front of the audience. Just like it's such a crutch. Every show has it now. There's an authority figure, a matchmaker. It's that Mr. McMahon character recycled to the 10th power. Every single show, SmackDown's got one. Main Event's got, you know, every show, whether it's TNA, Ring of Honor, they all have an authority figure who's making matches, and that's how you do it. But you don't have to do that.
I totally agree. Totally agree. And I want to just clarify something too for anybody that's watching this. We love wrestling. We want wrestling to succeed, but it just because something's been done for so long doesn't mean you can't change. I mean, wrestling for years, like you just said, didn't have authority figures. Okay, it was about what went on in the ring. Man, I don't know. Yeah. I think sometimes it's best. I mean, we're both writers. I mean, have you ever heard of the acronym KISS? You know, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, of course.
I think wrestling should use that.
Yeah, it's what was I going to say? It's just that they are tasked with so much TV to write that I think they just try to outthink them. You know, like this whole, I think, as good as the Brie Bella Steph angle as hot as that's been, they ruined it this week with the stupid
Claire Lynch
affair angle with clearly an actress playing the woman, and it's completely contrived. And to me, it was like when a few years ago when they redid Triple H Randy Orton, when Randy Orton handcuffed Triple H to the ropes and you know, RKO'd Stephanie or whatever it was. That was the hottest angle. I was off my couch going crazy. And then the next week, the week before the pay-per-view, I'm all ready to pay for it, and they do the home invasion act, and it ruined the whole thing. And again, it's just history repeating itself. Instead, just give me promos, dude. Like, give me a pack. How great has the Cena Brock been? because all it's been is promos and a really great 24/7 HBO 24/7 style, package.
And notice they didn't even touch each other. Even in the Go Home show, they just stared each other down. Cena took his shirt off. Brock walked away. Music played. They kept it simple. I mean, in wrestling, like what did old school wrestlers tell young guys all the time? Sometimes less is more.
That's it, dude. I mean, that's the thing. They want to be Breaking Bad. And they stopped, Vince is like dead set on, we're not wrestling, we're an entertainment, we're a written, scripted, weekly, episodic TV. They say it, they shove it down our throats. But people don't need that. I don't need that with my wrestling. I really don't.
I don't. But if you're gonna do that, right? Why don't you just, instead of having 22 writers on staff, why don't you just pay Vince Gilligan $2 million then to write your show? I mean, at that point.
And like the Brie and Steph story, I love the cops, and cops in wrestling coming to arrest someone has been done to death. But the way they did it, they changed it up just enough where the mics weren't on them, they weren't cutting a promo, they were outside the ring, and they were reading her Miranda rights. They did that. It was great. It was believable. They took Stephanie away. The whole thing was hot. Then they do this whole thing where Brie gets arrested, and the cops are clearly workers. They're clearly jabronis. The guy takes the handcuffs out of his like front suit pocket, like completely unprofessional. It was just so, the follow up, like they have good ideas and then they just overthink it. And I've been there for that. I've definitely been there for that. But then again, you have Cena and Brock, which has been impeccable. So there are people in there that know what they're doing, but it's these stories that don't get as much attention from Vince and Stephanie and Triple H that just get crushed.
Right, and I think too that those issues are now magnified due to the network woes, because they literally banked the whole future of the company on the network. Whereas had they not done that, they still would have been profitable. Yes, you and I would have still been bitching and complaining about some improvements that they could easily make. But hey, they're making money. They could tell us to shut up. Now they're at the point where I feel like they really do have to make these changes. It's kind of like TNA. TNA for a while, they got by. I mean, whatever. They lost some money, but the Carters were fine, just throwing millions of dollars into it until they went on the road, racked up a ton of costs, and now it's like, uh-oh, we actually got to produce some good wrestling. Yeah,
well, I mean, look, the biggest mistake they made was, and the proof is on your TV every night on Raw, the biggest mistake they did was in 5 years ago, they had Paul Heyman in their office, and they let him walk away without a deal. And instead, they went with Bischoff and Hogan, and they took the show live. They brought in their old buddies. They did the storylines with Hogan's daughter, and the Bischoff did the whole story with the motorcycle gang, and it just set them back a lot. Whereas Heyman would have fired everybody over 30, and he would have had ownership, and he would have rebuilt something super contemporary and super exciting. But they weren't willing to give up that piece, and that's all history. But whatever. That's all. That's old history. I'm just saying, we're sounding like real negative people and haters, but there is a lot of, look, I'm excited for, even though it doesn't really mean that much, I'm excited for Bray and Jericho, just because I think it'll be a good match, and I think Bray going over Jericho is really good for him. But again, they make stupid mistakes with Bray Wyatt. I mean,
losing clean to Jericho just to dupe odds makers, like, come on, man.
How about they were building towards whatever Bray was in before Jericho, and they do before the Elimination Chamber, and they do a 6-man or the 4-on-3 matches, and they have Bray on the apron with 3 other heels. Why does that make sense? He should have just sat in his rocking chair in the aisle while it was a 6-man tag between everybody else in the match, because the character Bray Wyatt, this backwoods degenerate, would never get along with the heels or the babyfaces.
I agree, and I think too, I'm getting nervous for Bray. I mean, you notice the crowd was chanting "boring" during one of his promos. They chanted "what" the other night. I feel like the crowd's just no longer, I'm not saying they don't care about Bray, but I think they're getting kind of restless because he doesn't say a whole lot in his promos. Great delivery. Doesn't say a whole lot. And when he does say something, it's vowing to kill the babyface. And then he loses to the babyface.
Yeah. I think that they just, I don't know, they feel like he doesn't need to win to stay hot, but
yeah.
I don't know. He should be like Undertaker, dude. At this point, even though he hasn't built up that reputation, he should be booked like the Undertaker.
Can you see Roman Reigns being the guy by WrestleMania 31, or do you think, say, if a guy like Daniel Bryan comes back in January for a Royal Rumble, that he could, much like he did with Batista, kind of overtake Roman Reigns in popularity?
I think I think he could end up being the guy. I think it easily could happen, but you're not selling. I mean, it's WrestleMania. I don't think he's going to be in the main event because at this point, I mean, they put so much stock in WrestleMania that it's going to be something between two guys that are super established. Unless they go the Miz Cena route and it's, somehow you get Roman Reigns Cena.
I'm thinking Reigns and Lesnar is what they're aiming for. At least that's what I've heard. But I don't know how good of a match that would be, or if Roman Reigns would be hot enough like they want him to be.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he needs somebody. I think he needs somebody talking for him. He got kind of goofy with his promos this week. He tried to be funny. He tried to be sort of smart and cool heel, instead of sort of this enforcer, and it felt weird to me. I think Rollins could maybe get up there, but he's got the briefcase and it means nothing because they stopped every single week he should have been trying to cash in and Ambrose should have stopped him. That should have just gone on for months. And they did that for like 2 weeks and moved on from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ambrose definitely has a bright future. I think all three honestly have a bright future. The problem is I just feel like they want Roman Reigns to get over right now, and I feel like they're rushing him, whereas they probably should have taken the 2005 Batista approach with him, where they kept the Shield together for a little while, a little bit longer, and then late 2014, early 2015, that's when you really start to get behind him, have him win the Royal Rumble and everything.
That's not necessarily. I mean, that's more a product of what happened to Daniel Bryan. Mm-hmm. I don't think I don't think Roman Reigns would be on this sort of rocket ship to the top if what happened to Daniel Bryan didn't happen. I think that's the only card they had left to play. I think we'd be mired in. I think we'd still be in sort of the whole Orton and Rollins versus Reigns and Ambrose. Mm-hmm. We'd be getting a lot of that, the sort of follow up to the breakup of the Shield if Daniel Bryan were still in the main event. But in the void of Daniel Bryan, who do you have? You don't have anybody on the babyface side. You just have Cena.
That's true. So hey, you got to elevate somebody. I mean,
they tried making Cesaro top babyface, and they quit. He was just getting over as a heel, and then they switched him to a babyface, and that failed miserably. And now he's a jobber. So Swagger out of nowhere has become this sort of conquering babyface because of the tried and true U.S. versus Russia gimmick, which I think has been sort of a stroke of genius. But who would have thought when you broke up the Real Americans that Swagger would be the guy that's over? So
yeah, the lovable racist.
I can't wait to watch that match. To be honest, that's like the top four. I want to see Brie. I want to see Brie Steph. I definitely want to see Cena and Lesnar. I want to see Bray and Jericho, and I want to see Rusev versus Jack Swagger. I mean, those dudes haven't touched that much either. That program has been all sort of talk.
It's been built well, but I'm a little nervous because on one hand, you have the website that says what the flag match is, which is kind of like a capture the flag style. But then you hear other people say that, no, this is going to end via pinfall or submission. So I don't think they even really know what they're going to do this Sunday with the flag match. If it is a capture the flag format, I guess they could extend it for another month. But then you got Rusev Swagger going on for a third straight month. I presume Bray versus Jericho is going to go on for another month after SummerSlam. Then say they do a Cena Lesnar rematch. I mean, it's like you're saying they have all these hours of content to fill, and it's just leading to a ton of repetition.
That's right. Yeah, dude. That's it. What do you do with Cena and Lesnar if Lesnar destroys Cena? You keep Cena off TV?
Yeah.
Who Lesnar comes out the next night on Raw, who's challenging him? If you know what the internet says is correct and Lesnar's sticking around for a while. Because he has to win.
Yeah. Oh, he better win. I still can't believe he didn't win in 2012. That to me was just burning money right there.
Yeah. I mean, at least they made mention this week that they had Paul Heyman deliver the line that he had just come off diverticulitis. He was wrestling at 50%, and he still kicked the shit out of Cena, but eventually lost. So at least that gives him a little bit of an out for losing that match. He's got to win. He's got
100%. Well, hopefully by the time a lot of people are watching this, I mean, this will be up before SummerSlam, but if anybody is watching it after the fact, hopefully this time around with Cena and Lesnar, logic prevails.
So, I mean, just talking about, innovative ideas, like I think a traveling team would just be so useful just to freshen guys up. But I think something you put out on Twitter was super interesting about making sure there's at least one hot NXT match on every pay-per-view. I think it's a fantastic idea, super doable, super easy, and super effective. I think it's a very easily done, alteration to the status quo.
Yeah, and I think it also improves the morale of guys. I mean, you hear about guys like Sami Zayn and Andrew Neville, who are the pros of pros, not only the best workers in NXT, but some of the best workers in the company, and they're stuck making chump change and being watched by a very limited audience. I mean, think about what kind of morale boost it would be for those guys to be on a pay-per-view. Hell, to be on you want to make SmackDown special if it moves to Thursday nights, or maybe you want to make hour 2 of a long, dragged-out 3-hour Raw mean something. Put an NXT showcase match. You don't necessarily have to do it every week. You can do it once a month. Hell, you can even do it bi-weekly. But I think it would raise the stock of the brand. Maybe people would sample the network for NXT.
Yeah,
and it can make new stars.
How about on SmackDown, or part of the 3-hour boring, in that second hour of just crap on Raw? Give me an NXT rewind.
That's true. I would like to see that. And actually, do you remember? And I think you were there around that time. Remember when they had the SmackDown and ECW brands like quote unquote merge, and they did like a talent exchange?
Yeah.
Why not do the same thing with SmackDown and ECW, or NXT? So that way, maybe they won't have a traveling team, because you know how Vince is and not liking to work with other promoters. But maybe, dare I say, send a guy like Orton, or even send a guy to a lesser extent like Kofi Kingston to NXT for a while and have that talent exchange where, okay, if they get stale, all right, let's put them on NXT. Let's maybe just put them on SmackDown, keep them off Raw for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I think a draft, as poorly as those are executed, and God knows I fought hard to make it more like the NFL draft because I'm a huge draft nerd, but they're in desperate need of some kind of... The thing is, with the draft, there's not like a brand split anymore. So, a draft doesn't really mean anything, but that was one of the positives of the brands being split. You could have a draft. You could shake things up. There's just no mechanism now to have... You just have to... It's like vignettes and you bring a guy up. But if you... I don't know. I like your idea of integrating NXT in a small way into Raw and SmackDown and the pay-per-views.
And I think, too, for guys like Zayn and Neville, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, for those guys like that have been veterans, not only should you give them kind of like an NXT showcase every now and then, but for guys that have been there a while, that are clearly head and shoulders above the rest, why not pay them like main roster guys? If Zayn and Neville are that integral for the NXT brand, even though it's technically supposed to be a developmental territory, why not pay these guys like main roster guys as well?
Yeah, well, the second you start doing that, and the second you start making NXT, people like Orton on that show, then Vince is going to start watching it and
oh god, yeah,
putting his 2 cents in. So right now, that thing's being solely booked by basically Hunter and Dusty, who's down, in the trenches down there. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's sort of untouched, which is what happened to the ECW brand. It got in Vince's hands, and it became just another TV show. So, but I think it would be just to bring those guys up and let them feel what a pay-per-view is like. And I mean, they bring them to TV all the time. They work dark matches, but to put them on, to have them sort of steal the show, to have Adrian Neville steal the show at a pay-per-view, I mean, that's more effective than 12 vignettes.
Totally agree. And also, one thing we should know, I mean, hey, props to Triple H for signing these guys like Kevin Steen, Kenta, Devitt. I mean, these are great signings. Yeah. But, you know, anybody that knows talent, I mean, would sign these guys. I think ultimately Triple H's legacy as far as like, the head of talent relations is going to be how these guys turn out on the main roster, not so much what they do in NXT.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think you have to worry about those guys. It's the homegrown talent that I just think that just because they got through the NXT system doesn't mean they're ready. I mean, look, you listen to Edge on Jericho's podcast. I mean, he talks about it when he signed with WWE. They gave him a year of pay. They paid him for a year while he worked indies and you know, other promotions just while they were waiting for him. You know, he worked for a full year getting paid by WWE, wrestling for other companies just until they were ready for him. And I think that's something that these guys in NXT miss out on because they go right from college or whatever, you know, working as a mailman or whatever, and then they go and try to achieve their dream, and they go to the performance center and they learn a couple holds and they come up with a cool character, and then they're on TV and they don't know what to do. So I just think if they would just relax their xenophobia of other promotions a little bit and just let these guys go, and that's why Cesaro and Punk and Daniel Bryan and Sami Zayn, that's why they all are successful, because they've wrestled all over the world. They're not fake. They know what to do. They know how to wrestle. They know how to get over. And it's these homegrown talents that I just worry about, because they just all seem like they're just cookie cutter. They came right off the WWE assembly line. They wear the flashy tights. They cut generic promos, and they all wrestle the same style.
I totally agree. And I think also, too, with Paul Levesque, Triple H, I think he's got to open his mind a little bit. Not just with other promotions, but I think the guy needs to buy a ticket to a UFC fight one day and just sit in the front row and just watch MMA. Yes, there are some aspects of MMA that don't always translate well on TV, but there's other aspects that do. You know, there's a lot of MMA elements in pro wrestling these days, and I feel like, I mean, I don't know if you heard, did you hear his conference call with Stephanie McMahon a couple weeks back?
I read, you know, the ones where they ripped up. They basically said that UFC isn't competition for them.
I mean, they ripped not only UFC, they ripped Real Sports. They said, yeah, I mean, who'd go back and watch old footage? Our footage is timeless. Meanwhile, there's the NFL Network, there's NBA TV, there's ESPN, there's ESPN 30 for 30. I mean, I think Triple H is more open-minded than Vince in a lot of ways, but I also think I don't know if you'd agree with me or not. I think he's still kind of closed-minded, albeit in different ways compared to Vince.
Well, I mean, there's no reason why somebody like AJ Styles should not be, you know, wrestling the last couple years of his career in WWE. I mean, the fact that they won't even give him a shot, to me, is a joke.
Or a respectable offer, anyway. I mean,
or a respectable offer. Yeah. I mean, I make the analogy. I'm a big Eagles fan. It's almost as if Chip Kelly were to be like, I'm only going to draft players from Oregon. Now, look, he drafts a couple, which is fine. But it's like if a coach in the NFL who comes from college said, I'm only going to draft players from the college I came from. That's basically what WWE is doing right now, besides the indie signings just recently. But their overall what they've verbalized in terms of their policy is, we can make a AJ Styles. We don't have to sign an AJ Styles. And I think that's short-sighted. I think that's unfortunate, because there's a lot of talent out there.
Absolutely.
I always think of it when I'm watching TNA. I'm like, what would WWE do with Bobby Roode?
I mean, I would pay a guy like Bobby Roode 6 figures just to have him on the roster, even if you don't think he could be a main eventer, just to teach guys how to work. I mean, that guy, just everything he does in the ring means something.
He's
you
a
need
good
guys like that.
There's just not a lot of good hands as a wrestling term. You know, there used to be guys on the roster like William Regal, and you know, it meant something when they came out and they aligned with somebody, but you didn't need them to be in the main event. You know, I think that's one of the reasons they brought Rob Van Dam back. He's not beloved backstage, but they needed somebody who can get the work out of these young guys and who can teach them how to work. I think it's ironic that Rob Van Dam's that guy now when he's the you know, he's the king fuck up. So yeah. He's the guy who's been arrested and fired and DUIs and drugs and the whole thing. So it's interesting. Their whole the policies are interesting. I think I have to believe they're going to change more in the favor of all the stuff we're talking about soon. Once Triple H really gets a hold and really gets to put his stamp on the product. He's just now sort of getting those, you know, getting that free reign. You know, once Kevin Dunn's gone, once that you know, that whole Vince system is put out to pasture, I really think we're going to get a return to sort of that exciting TV.
I sure hell hope you're right, man, because it's I mean, yeah, we've talked about it for an hour. It's obviously very frustrating. Do you have a few more minutes just for some quick fan questions?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, it's SummerSlam season. This person asks, what's your favorite SummerSlam angle that you've seen or that you've been a part of?
I'm so bad at remembering when things were and what they were on. I did, I'm trying to remember what SummerSlam 2006 was, which is when I was there. I think, no, that was Survivor.
That was Edge and John Cena, where if Edge lost, Edge got disqualified, he'd lose the title.
Yeah. I mean, that was when I would be curious to see what the SmackDown matches were. But I don't know. It's a bad answer because I'm so not the guy who remembers what happened at SummerSlam this year or Royal Rumble that year, unless you're talking about Royal Rumble 92, which is like my favorite thing ever. But trying to think. I don't know. Let's get back to that one. Sorry, bad answer.
Hey, it's all good.
It's like a hole in my wrestling knowledge. It's like dates and times and associations like that.
All right. What is the craziest angle or match that you had a hand in putting together that for whatever reason never came to fruition on TV?
Oh, never came to fruition. Because I was going to say the triple team ladder match. Again, I don't remember which pay-per-view, but it was in 2006 between Mercury and Morrison, the Hardys, and Regal and Taylor. Or no, sorry, the
London and was it London and Kendrick in there?
Yeah, London and Kendrick, and they won it, and then Vince refused to do anything with them. That's also when Mercury got his face split open.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that was 2005. No, that was Armageddon 2006. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, Stephanie yelled, "Get towels!" and I ran and got towels, and he came back with a huge slash across his face. I would say there was a lot of, you know what? Probably Paul. I'll go with Paul Heyman's. The way Paul Heyman wanted to book the ECW Elimination Chamber, with Punk being the first one in against Big Show and makes him tap to the Anaconda Vice, and then it's like, holy crap, we're going to have a new ECW champion because Big Show just tapped, and then Punk goes through everybody in the chamber and he comes out the champion, and Vince would not acknowledge that that was a good idea and would not let it happen, and that led to Paul Heyman leaving the company. So we were all behind that. We all wanted it to happen. And we all thought Punk was ready. None of the agents thought Punk was ready. God, the agents wanted Hardcore Holly to be the face of ECW. So,
well, wait, hey, hang on. So they thought Punk wasn't ready, but they thought and with all due respect, I like Bobby Lashley a lot. But at that time, 2006, they thought Bobby Lashley was ready over CM Punk?
Look what Bobby Lashley looks like.
Yeah.
They saw money, but they were wrong.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah, but that was, that specific pitch by Paul Heyman and Vince not letting it happen directly led to Paul leaving.
That's true. Now, actually, you were there in 06, 07. So you were there around the time that Kurt Angle left, right? Or he got fired?
Yeah, I don't think I was there when he got fired or left. But I was definitely there for his run in the ECW with the armored guards and the whole thing. And he was just in really, really bad shape. I mean, everybody was on what they called it at the time, Eddie Watch, because it was pre-Benoit. Now I guess you'd call it Benoit Watch, but it was Eddie Watch, you know? They all just thought they were going to get a call about Kurt Angle.
And it's amazing. I mean, thank God that he's, still alive. I mean, I don't know how well, you know what I mean? But
he says he's sober, and he's working through a knee injury, but man, he's put together some incredible matches under some crappy conditions in TNA. So I hope WWE gives him another run.
Well, that was the question. Do you think that according to Wrestling Observer, he's trying to pitch a Shawn Michaels like schedule to WWE, but WWE officials are not too high on that. Do you think that realistically we'll see Kurt Angle back in some form, either as a wrestler or non-wrestler in WWE?
I would hope that he gets a couple matches because there's just so many. I just think it would be right for his career. I mean, look, he took the second half of his prime and his post-prime in TNA. And look, he had some incredible matches, but in the long run, nobody's going to remember them unless they happen in a WWE ring. And I hope for his sake that they give him at least a couple pay-per-view, a couple matches, because there's just some matches that I think would be incredible to watch, to see. I just don't think they trust him.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'll ask you one more question. You know what? Let's go all the way to WrestleMania 31. Where will pro wrestling in North America be at by WrestleMania 31? I'm talking about WWE, I'm talking about TNA, and I'm talking about the network.
All right, well, if I'm booking, however long it takes Daniel Bryan to come back, let him have it. Daniel Bryan comes back, cuts an amazing promo about the fans sticking with him, all this, etc. I'm going to fight to get my spot back, to get the title back that I never lost, etc., etc. Punk's music plays. He comes down, says you stole my spot, and you're on to WrestleMania, and you have Punk versus Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania. If I'm booking, and if I control the purse strings, that's what I'm doing. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think your question was realistically what's going to happen. I think, it's going to be whatever the biggest possible match is that they can, figure out between guys like Cena, Brock, Rock, whoever they can bring back to get a headline match in there. I honestly don't think WrestleMania 31's main event is going to be young, upstart, new face versus somebody like Brock or Cena. I think it's going to be another incarnation of something we've seen before, sadly.
Maybe Bryan Lesnar? I mean, is that an outside possibility?
Yeah. I think that's more realistic than seeing Roman Reigns, Lesnar. I hope it happens. I hope Daniel Bryan can get back, can wrestle again, because I would pay to see Daniel Bryan versus Brock Lesnar, just because a small guy versus a big guy like that's going to be awesome. I think the network still will not have the subscribership they are hoping for. I think they're going to try every which way. I think maybe we'll see third hour of Raw on the network. Raw moves to 2, something like that. I mean, maybe not, just because the USA, banks on those promotional dollars.
Did you remember that the network's $9.99? I don't know if you caught that on Raw the last couple weeks.
Yeah, but now it's $12.99. So, but I did catch all those jokes. But I was trying to think the whole time we were talking about you were talking about the changes that Triple H is making. One of the things I love that he's doing is the re-emphasis of the legends. I think that's one of the clearest indications that Triple H is gaining more power, is just the respect for legends. I mean, you had Hogan's birthday, you had Flair on TV, you had Paul Orndorff come back, the Bruno Sammartino, you had the Ultimate Warrior get his moment, all that kind of stuff. So I have faith in Triple H, and I don't think the company's going anywhere. I don't think they're in trouble of going under. But I don't think the network is going to be the success they thought it was going to be. And then your other question, what was Mania, the network?
And I'd say if TNA survives, TNA. And I guess, Yeah. Mention TNA, and let's just say, God forbid, TNA doesn't exist by WrestleMania for whatever reason. Just I guess throw a dark horse out there or a promotion you think that would kind of take their place.
Ring of Honor. I think Spike should sign Ring. I mean, if TNA went away and Spike has any desire to still be in the wrestling business, a weekly Ring of Honor show. I mean, I think they'd get a bigger number. I think they'd eventually get a bigger weekly number than TNA does.
So you don't think Spike would join the Force?
What do you mean?
With Global Force Wrestling, that's their slogan. Jeff Jarrett's promotion.
TBD. I don't know enough about it. I mean, it just seems like retread. It seems like a lot of old guys and international guys that we've never heard of. So TBD on that. But I think Ring of Honor. There's no reason why that company should not be on weekly television somewhere on a real channel. I just think the shows that they're putting on and the type of wrestling and the sort of old school presentation is there's just such a need for it. I'd love to see them get a national TV slot.
I think it's all incumbent on Sinclair, though. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, unless somebody just maybe want to buy like a stake from Sinclair or something. Like, it seems like Sinclair just seems like they're happy keeping them at whatever level they're at.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to see that happen. I think, look, TNA's gonna. I think they'll have more streaming. Maybe go to the pay-per-view model, less pay-per-views. Sort of. I kept pitching them the Clash of Champions model with the live specials on Spike and less pay-per-views, and they sort of tried to do that, but they didn't go consistently towards that. I think what'll happen realistically is they will bulk shoot months in advance their TV.
But as you predicted at the beginning of the show, you think ultimately, at least for the rest of the year, they will survive somewhere.
Yeah, I think they'll be on past their whatever deadline has been put out there that when their contract is up. And if not on Spike, I think they'll end up somewhere else. I just think there's too many forces behind them to go away completely.
Bonus question: how are your Philadelphia Eagles going to do this season? I'm a little worried just because they over-exceeded expectations last season, and they were extremely healthy last year. And this year, I think the expectations are sky high, which means they can only come in below those. So I'm a little worried about that. I'm worried about their depth. So I think any big injury will really hurt this team. And I'm worried about, I'm worried about the Deshaun Jackson thing. I love what they did in the draft with receivers, but there's going to be games where we miss that guy. And look, I didn't like him. I didn't like him as a person. I didn't like him necessarily as a player. I used to beg. I want taller receivers, and that's what we got. But we're gonna get crushed by Deshaun and RG3 in at least one of those two Redskins games. Yeah, well said. Well said. We'll see what happens. I mean, I don't know.
You're a Giants fan?
I'm a Giants fan. I'm a little nervous.
I think you're in the dark days right now.
Oh, David Wilson, poor guy. I feel so bad for him.
It's heartbreaking. I mean, I like the rookie running back in the preseason game. He looked pretty good, but I just think Eli in a new system, 11 years into his career or whatever it is, it's like, I don't know. You're asking for trouble.
Yeah, I don't think at this point, I don't think he's a good quarterback any longer. Maybe he can turn it around, but you got to look at what have you done for me lately, right? And lately,
and there's nobody on the defense that sort of scares me. There's some old names that used to carry some weight, but there's nobody on the defense that's exciting or that scares me. I just think the Giants are in a big transitional phase.
I think the division. You know what? I think the division for the second straight year, the NFC East, is going to suck. Though I think that's still anyone's division.
Dallas is terrible, and Tony Romo, his career goes nowhere. I'll be semi-happy, but I think the Eagles will be. I just have faith in Chip Kelly. I just think he just knows more than he. I think he's the real deal. So I think they'll be fine. But I'm scared to death of a big injury. Because they have no depth, and they still didn't improve their kicker, and the kicker lost the playoff game for them.
That is true. Well, Andrew Goldstein, tremendous insight as always, man. It was a pleasure talking to you tonight. Before I let you go, obviously we can find you on Twitter, as you see on the screen right there, at @AndgGold. Anywhere else? I know you got a column with PW Mania.
Yeah, I don't
have anything else? Podcasts, shows coming up?
Not really. I sadly don't write as much as I should, but you know, in September, at the end of September, check out The Buzz when it comes back on VH1. Every morning it'll be at 9 a.m. now instead of 10 a.m. But yeah, just check me out on Twitter. I try to live tweet Raw. I try to live tweet the pay-per-views, and I'm always available for questions. I mean, you and I had a great back and forth debate, so I'm always open to talk some wrestling. And dude, if you ever just want to talk, you know, East Coast sports, let's do it, man. College basketball, whatever. Let's do it.
Hell yeah, man, dude! You gotta come to one of these Pro Wrestling Syndicate shows in Jersey, man. I'm there all the time. Maybe we'll go to Iron Sheik's roast in October.
I've never done. You know, I'll be at the roast. I can't confirm my role, but I should be participating in some manner, as I did in the other New York Sheik roast. I wrote for Rosenberg, and I wrote for the wrestlers that roasted, and hopefully I'll be doing that again. But I've never done that level of indie. I've never gone to those type of shows, so I would love to come to one. Let me know.
Maybe make it a weekend, because the weekend of the roast, I think the roast for Sheiky Baby is October 30th in New York City. And then October 31st is PWS's show. And the reason I say you should go to that, and I don't know how big of a WCW fan you were back in the day, but Harlem Heat is reuniting for the first time, I think, since 1999.
Really? That's great.
Yeah, I mean, Stevie
I haven't
Ray.
seen Stevie Ray.
Yeah.
The tights on. I love it. We get a little spinaroonie, get the old theme music, get the old tights with the ring in the middle. Cool, man. Yeah, let me know. We'll talk offline.
Sounds good, man. Andrew Goldstein, thank you so much.